what the Church of Scientology is so afraid of.
This is
SPTV. Welcome to the jungle, Mitch Brisker.
Hi, Aaron. Good to see you again.
Usually when we start a video, I've got my screen share set up ready to show everyone your channel, and I neglected that step. Guys, if you're watching right now and you're in the live stream, Goldie, if you could put a link to Mitch Brisker's YouTube channel. At this point, you've got enough. Your presence on YouTube, I think, is enough that if someone just punches in your name, you're probably going to be the top. Your channel will probably be the top search result.
Yeah, I mean, on my name, I think, because I have a relatively unique name.
Yes, indeed. Guys, we're here to talk about Shelly Miscavige and her imminent takeover of the Church of Scientology.
Right.
By the way, I learned a lesson today. I've been running around errands. I've been wearing a hat for the last hour, and now I look like I have an autoimmune disease of some sort because I've got a ring and a rash around my head. So in case the viewers are wondering what the heck's going on there. Yeah,
you need to invest in just a little bit of makeup. I'm serious. I'm serious. It's really easy to handle that stuff.
Do you know there is a little bit of makeup? I have this red dot on my face that's very evident on camera. And I have this little tube of green makeup, and I put one little dot right there before I go live usually because I hate the look.
It's gone. Yeah.
It's totally gone.
Look, makeup is part of this art form. I have like a dulling makeup. Sometimes I'm too shiny. It's just like dulling spray for your face. But
I actually have a full head of hair, but I use makeup to make it look like I don't.
Right.
Yes. Someone told me the bald look is the sexy look. Forget that luscious.
No, it is.
Those luscious locks. Forget that. Just go with the bald look.
It is. I'm going to be auctioning off photos of Aaron Smith Levin in the wild with this full head of hair on my channel later. So.
Have I ever shown you my headshots from when I was 17? You wouldn't even believe it.
Oh, I think. When you were an extra, you did some movie work. That's right.
Yeah, just background stuff. Nothing.
No, but you should definitely post that, or at least
I'm embarrassed because everyone's going to comment. They're going to say, "What happened to you? Where did it all go wrong?"
Yeah, well, there's a picture of me that Mark Headley used on our series on one of the episodes of Mark and Mitch Make a Scientology Film from when I was 22, and I looked like, one of the guys from Three Dog Night with a big mustache.
I saw that photo. I was like,
I
was like, now I understand. I said, now I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so look, this is a follow-on to a conversation that me and Sterling Tompkins had a few days ago. And that conversation was based on an email that he got from someone who did work at International Management. Since I don't know the person's identity and background, Sterling does though. I don't know how their years at Int compares to your years spent at Int.
Right.
But this is going to be a great topic for us to discuss. So let me just pull it up and we'll just let's just do this. So this guy says, this is about Shelly. He says, your recent discussion about Shelly Miscavige was spot on, but there's one aspect I haven't heard discussed. Shelly was and still is the one single person who could bring down David Miscavige if she were able to talk to literally anyone outside of Scientology. I'm completely certain that at some point in 2005 or 2006, she turned on Dave because she finally recognized how far beyond L. Ron Hubbard and everything she grew up knowing David Miscavige had gone. She recognized how dangerous he was and how off the rails he was, and she probably told him that she was going to expose him and stop him. He had to make her disappear. She truly had the power and the authority, and at the time, she would have rallied enough support to overthrow him, and that is why she was never sent to the hole. In the hole, she would have had enough backing to break the system of repression and suppression of everyone who had previously held authority or knew what LRH had actually intended and directed. Okay, now you have some strong thoughts about this.
I mean, in due respect, which is usually the way you start a sentence when you're going to say that you think the other person is completely full of it. Yeah, with all due respect to the person who wrote that. I mean, running Scientology, being the head of Scientology, it's not a popularity contest. And he's kind of implying, well, that Shelly could go in there. If she was in the hole, can't put her in the hole because she would somehow rally the troops. Look, David Miscavige, the only way to think of him is like a mafia boss. And the only way you're going to take down a mafia boss is, we've all seen the movies, he's going out in a box. even if David Miscavige was in prison, he would still be running Scientology, just like a mafia don would be. So I don't buy that. I mean, I don't think that's even possible. Plus, just hear me out here, okay?
Yeah.
Think about everything that's changed while Shelly's been in there. Well, just to back up a second, the reason she's not in the hole is just bad PR. It's his wife. He would never put his wife in the hole. You get what I'm saying? He still has this sort of public relations image, even amongst his own troops, to kind of maintain. Putting her in the hole, I think that would have been horrible. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to put a pin. Well, I don't want to interrupt you, but I do. So I'm not going to interrupt you beyond saying, let me interrupt you to make a note to revisit it, because I don't want to interrupt your train of thought. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. My note is going to say, Miscavige, DM, image problem, Shelly. Go on.
Yeah, okay, good. Think about everything that's changed in the world of Scientology since Shelly's been gone.
Okay.
Her home at the int base would be unrecognizable to her, except the physical property. All of the executives that she would rally to power, they've all had their claws removed and their fangs removed, and they're doing menial little jobs. You've got that. Then you've got all of the production facilities, other than Gold, like Scientology Media Productions, the Dissemination Center, which, if your viewers aren't aware, is this powerhouse machine where they print all of their mail and everything is distributed. And then Bridge Publications, which is this massive on-demand print for all of the Scientology books. And then Author Services, which manages, the quote-unquote, well, they're really mostly his dime novels that he wrote, a long time ago. So he micromanages these places. Like, all of the levers of power into all these places are his. And nobody really understands what they are. They're all based on personal contact and communication. Then, as you know, he's got a network of religious technology center representatives at organizations around the world. These are very loyal lieutenants that are his people. So let's say she went in and she rallied the troops and they all said, "That's it, Dave, you're done." What next, in my mental experiment, the next thing they would be doing would be standing around with their thumbs up, their proverbial, and they'd be saying, "Well, what do we do now?" Because literally they wouldn't know what to do. So I mean, that's how I see it.
Interesting. Hold on. I'm just making my notes. Okay.
Yeah, no
so
problem.
My thoughts on this. Well, first of all, I want to go back to the what I think was being referred to in the gentleman's emails, which isn't that Shelly could necessarily take over right now, but that back in 2005, 2006, that she would have, at least in theory, posed a very real threat as the only one who actually could have posed that type of threat. I mean, she is the only one who had been at that high level of the org board, basically next to David Miscavige for as long as she had. I mean, he's had other deputies and lieutenants and whatever, but she is sort of deputy COB. I know it's COB's assistant. Is it COB's assistant or assistant to the, assistant COB or assistant to the COB? But for those who worked with her, she has the credibility of having been a messenger under L. Ron Hubbard. David Miscavige was never a watch messenger under L. Ron Hubbard. And actually, I don't actually know, was Shelly a watch messenger or was she just a messenger? I think there's a difference and I don't claim to know right now.
Yeah, I don't actually know.
So let me shift gears here.
Yeah, go ahead.
The likelihood or ability of Shelly to overthrow Dave, to me, is similar to the unlikelihood that Dave should have been able to overthrow the people he overthrew. Dave didn't have the authority to get rid of a lot of people he actually got rid of. He didn't have the authority to get rid of Pat Broker. He managed to do it. He didn't have the authority to get rid of Russ Bellin. He technically did it. He didn't have the authority to get rid of Terry Gamboa, but he did it anyway. He had the power because people wouldn't say no to him. So theoretically speaking, let's say this. Let's say that Shelly was someone that Shelly convinced other people who were in the hole, who were at the WDC level, the IMEC level, that they simply didn't have to say yes to Dave anymore. And so let's say when Dave walks into Shelly's office and says, "You're going to the RPF," and she goes, "No, I'm not, Dave." And his deputies and him MAAs were like, "Dave, we're not sending her to the sir, we're not sending her to the RPF." His power comes, depending on how we want to define it, right? His power comes from the fact that people won't say no to him. And I think the email was basically saying, not that Shelly tried to depose him, right, or even did he actually say that he thought she might have threatened him? She recognized how dangerous he was and how off the rails he was, and she probably told him she was going to expose him and stop him. I think you and I both probably agree that that's not incredibly likely that she said, "I'm going to expose you and stop you." That's not likely.
No, she was his assistant. I mean, people pump this up a lot, but she was his assistant. That's not a real high. That's not a high a job as people give her credit for. In my observation, when I was there and I would see the two of them together and I would interact with him and I'd see her at the interactions, she was very much an assistant.
As opposed to who? Was there anyone else that you felt had more authority in RTC than her?
I'm trying to think back then. Maybe Greg Wilhair. Yeah, the guys who were, when I first went up there, what I experienced was the Inspector General network. I mean, which was, it was Mark Yeager was Inspector General for admin, and
Rim Madoff was tech and Marty was
ethics. Exactly.
Did they not just act like glorified deputies or assistants to Dave? Or
well, from what I experienced, they had some authority. The one who seemed to have the most authority was Marty. But there were many times that I hung out with them. Just sort of, we get together, they'd invite me up to the office, we'd smoke, because I was being love bombed. So you have to remember it was in that context, right? But Marty seemed to be the one who had the most sort of authority. But it was not like I ever saw any of them interrupt Dave. So, well, Dave, I don't think so. I think we should do it like this. Like, he always had the last word. But it seemed like when I first got up there, the four of them were running the show. And they seemed to me, they were all more had more power than Shelly did.
What about compared to Larice?
Well, now we're jumping way forward.
Wait, why is that way forward?
Well, you're talking about, because I was talking about 1990 when I first met them. So in my mind, I was back then, and then then we're talking about 2005. Isn't that the time? No. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. My understanding was that Larice has been around working with and for Dave for just about as long as Shelly has. Is that not true?
I don't remember her at all at the beginning. It could be true, but I don't remember her. Like, I saw Dave daily, every day for years, multiple times a day.
When do you remember Larice coming back on the scene?
It was about where she very well could have been there in the background. Around the time that Shelly disappeared, she began to advance forward. That's when I really started to notice her, which is probably in the early 2000s. Yeah.
Well, then we are talking about completely different things, because of course, in the absence of Shelly, Larice would become more prominent. I'm referring to a period where they coexisted, as one was assistant, one was communicator. And I was under the impression, unless I've misunderstood or been misinformed, that Larice was his communicator for more or less as long as Shelly's been his assistant. If there's anyone in the live chat from Int who can correct the record, because that has a huge bearing on this conversation.
Yeah, well, that could very well be. I didn't even really notice her.
I see.
I didn't even notice her. I noticed Shelly a lot. I didn't even notice Larice till later.
Okay.
She just was like, my view was, in terms of what I was doing and who I needed to pay attention to and work with. Larice wasn't one of those people that I had any concern about ever.
So
until later,
had no concern about, or didn't know who she was?
Oh no, I knew who they all were, but she wasn't somebody that I particularly needed to pay attention to, because if she was there at all, she would just be in the background taking notes or with a tape recorder, making sure that so that later communication could be routed to the correct person and so forth.
But are you saying she was there from 1990 on?
I never noticed her until later. Literally, I never noticed her. That doesn't mean that she's not there, but there were, for the quite a few years that I was up there, I did not notice Larice. She was just if she was there, she was invisible to me.
But you did notice Shelly.
Oh yeah, they were not always together. I would see him a lot because remember, I was shooting the technical training films and I was submitting rushes, all of the shots to him daily, and he was watching them daily, and then we would generally see one another or have correspondence. So I saw him sometimes 2-3 times a day, all throughout the 90s, up until the point where the Lisa McPherson thing happened, and then he disappeared for some months.
So if people would bring you messages from Dave, who would bring them to you?
Any number of people. I'm trying to think of her name. There were a few comm runners that worked in the RTC office. One of them is still there. I just can't think of her name because I'm deprogramming myself, and part of that is you being to forget that stuff. But yeah, one of the comm runners, but not Larice, because she didn't run comm. The comm runners were a very specific group of 2 or 3 people that would run around the base and hand out dispatches. Was
it Serena?
Serena was one of them. I'm trying to think of the main one, and I don't remember when she came on, but she's, as far as I know, she's still there. Yeah, Serena was one of them.
Was it Tori Mackay?
Yeah, Tori she's like the head one. You know Tori? Or is somebody
Mark? It's either Mark or Claire in the chat.
Oh my God, they have like their memory is like, I can't remember Tori's name, and I probably saw her in 2018, and they live in 2005, and they remember her name. Yeah,
is that Mark or Claire in the chat right now? I'm guessing. I'm guessing Claire has a better memory for these people than Mark does. Yeah, it's Mark. Look.
Well, but Mark, Mark has one of the most remarkable memories in all of humanity.
No, it's true, but Claire specifically worked closer with the RTC.
Yeah. But Mark, he would remember all that stuff where I would forget it because I was trying to forget it.
Okay, so let's go back to this email real quick, because I want to make sure if we're actually agreeing or disagreeing on something here. So he goes, Shelly was and still is the one single person who could bring down David Miscavige if she were to talk to literally anyone on the outside. Okay, let's jump forward. She truly had the power and the authority, and at the time, she would have rallied enough support to overthrow him. What is your key disagreement with that assertion?
Well, because what does that mean to overthrow Miscavige? For one thing, even in 2005, he had the support of every Scientologist in the world and the very loyal support of Sea Org members. And for somebody to step in there, like for somebody to take the stage, and I mean figuratively and literally, for her to walk out on the stage and say, it's not him anymore, it's me. I think it would be so chaotic, whatever method by which they would make that transition. I've never been able to comprehend it. Where the rubber meets the road is you can easily say she had the power, she had this, she knew this, people liked her, people respected her. She was raised from 12 years old by L. Ron Hubbard. But at the end of the day, somebody needs to step out on the stage. Somebody needs to say something like, we're not here for David Miscavige. We're here because of L. Ron Hubbard, and I'm going to lead you back into that. Somebody needs to do something to make that transition of power happen. And I cannot fathom what that would possibly be. I mean, yeah, I can't.
So let me give you my thoughts, and let's see where we arrive on this. It is my belief that the public have absolutely zero to do with this equation of whether Shelly could, should, or would do anything. And I just want to know if we agree on this, because the public's input is quite literally completely irrelevant. And they would have, and even your Sea Org members, your city level, your advanced org, your org level, your CLO level, your middle management level Sea Org members would also be 100% irrelevant in this conversation. And that it really comes down to the fact of the people. And for this conversation, we're going to talk about INT. We're going to ignore the fact that INT doesn't really exist anymore and it's SMP. We're going to ignore that. Okay.
Right.
Because in 2004, 2005, INT was still actually, no, it was already unmocked, wasn't it? It was already kind of,
it was heading in that direction.
Okay. All it would take is for You remember the email Debbie Cook sent out that one New Year's Eve?
Very well.
I think most Sea Org members would have agreed with Debbie Cook's email.
Okay.
If they were allowed to say they agreed with it, they would have agreed with it. Do you feel differently?
I'm gonna say that I don't know. I'm going to say that I don't know. My gut instinct is no, because Debbie Cook's email caused a mass exodus, and that's not what anybody wanted. In other words, displacing David Miscavige in such a way that it causes a mass exodus from Scientology is certainly not what anybody would consider taking over Scientology.
But nobody but the intention wasn't to displace Miscavige.
I know it wasn't. But the fact of the matter is that Scientologists did not call, like nobody called for a changing of the guard when they read that thing. They didn't protest Miscavige. They just left. There was a massive exodus. They just said, "Screw it, I'm done." You see what I'm saying? So
don't you think that's because they knew that they had two choices? Choice A, try to get rid of David Miscavige, which isn't even possible, or choice B, leave.
Well, I think exactly. Yeah. I mean,
like, I think leaving was because the alternative isn't possible.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know. Now we're into some conjecture that I don't even.
No. This whole fucking thing is conjecture. No, hold on. Let me bring it back.
Now we're into super, double, triple level, next level conjecture.
No, we're not. Let me bring it. Let me bring it a step back. I, as a former Sea Org member,
right,
who was very much pro David Miscavige, I didn't leave the Sea Org because I was against David Miscavige.
Right.
Agreed with everything in Debbie Cook's email.
Right.
Most Sea Org members in the world probably never saw Debbie Cook's email. Probably. I think most Scientologists agreed with Debbie Cook's email. They just had to decide whether to leave or stay. And I think most Sea Org members, especially people who worked with L. Ron Hubbard and or were loyal to the idea of L. Ron Hubbard, which most people at International Management were, I think if they had read Debbie Cook's email, would have gone, she's right. You don't feel that way?
No, not at all.
Why?
Not at all. Because, well, I want to just back up and just put a pin in that. Okay. We'll circle back, as they say.
Okay.
You said that you don't think the public have anything to do with this equation.
Correct.
I think the public have everything to do with this equation because he derives so much of his power from public support. I mean, look, I got it here, right here. This I got. You probably can't see this. This is some stupid shit.
Journey with Ron, L. Ron Hubbard Hall.
You see these people here?
Yep.
See these people here? Those are the people that you say don't count in the equation. These people are worth probably well over billions of dollars, and they're paying. These are the big donors, okay? And their support. Hold on,
they don't count.
You said they don't count on this equation. They're the ones. Yeah, but the equation is that David Miscavige has their support, and they're not going to shift it over to somebody like Shelly. They know him personally. He's hung out with them.
That implies that anybody would ask them to. Nobody would ask them to. Nobody would consult them. That's what I mean.
Well, but
nobody would consult them, and their opinion is not necessary.
Okay, so they're just going to take over. But then what are they going to do? That's the main core body of funding for the church, are those individuals. So what are they going to do when this happens? What are they going to do?
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let's say you're one of those guys. Let's say you're Tom Cummins. You've given $35 million to the IAS. You're given $35 million. You got a glorious head of hair. Okay.
Yeah. And a head that's just bigger than a bobblehead.
You've given $35+ million to the IAS. Most of your family members are nowhere on the bridge. You've got big trophies. You've got big awards.
Right.
What would you rather? To continue to be asked for a few $1 million a year, or to be told, I've got great news, everybody. We're moving forward with a refined, pared down strategy. We're opening up all the ideal orgs this year. We're going to keep them in high foot traffic areas. We're going to be less expensive, slightly smaller, and we're going to get this strategy done next year. And you can put more of your money towards the bridge and less of the money towards buildings in the IAS. You think Tom Cummins is going to be like, now hold the phone. I wanted to keep donating tens of millions of dollars for those trophies.
Hold on a second, but what happened to David Miscavige in your message? Where did he go? Like, he's gone because they've taken. Huh?
We could back it. I mean, I can come up with an explanation if you
Well,
want me to.
sure, so could I, but I think we're trying to rank the plausibility of our explanations, not just come up with explanations.
I'm saying the
right?
public's approval is not required in order for the theoretical example where Shelly gets all the international executives to go, you guys all know damn well that Debbie Cook was right, and we're going to do something about it. Dave, take a hike. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying in that scenario, the public's approval is not requested or required.
Right.
But you think it is? But you think it is?
Well, I think it plays an important role. I don't think that obviously nobody's going to ask the public what they think, but these people are so invested in Miscavige. I mean, I've been to the events. You know, I've sat in the front row. I've hung out while he greeted people and met. Yes.
Don't you think they're invested because they have to be? They might want to be, but they have to be as well.
What do you mean by have to? I mean, have to be. You're talking about.
When you come in for your OT eligibility, your sec check questions are whether you're talking shit about David Miscavige.
Yeah, but now David Miscavige has been displaced. You're right when things are normal, but now he's been displaced. Mm-hmm. In this scenario, somebody has got to make the announcement. They're not going to just, you know, when these other executives disappeared, like, and no longer spoke at events, well, with the exception of people like Mike Rinder, who they had to come out and say something to the public. They do matter, but they wouldn't be consulted. Sorry, I had to read Mark's.
That's okay.
Mark's comment. I guess
what I'm saying is you can feed the public whatever you need to feed the public, but they're not gonna go, oh my God, we so were in love with David Miscavige that we're angry that you're telling us that now we're not gonna have to donate so much money anymore, and we're not gonna be
why do you think they don't have to donate so much money anymore? I don't understand. Because
that's the only reason oh, okay, maybe this was a missing premise.
Yeah.
I think the premise here is that the only reason in this example to get rid of David Miscavige would be to correct internally the things that Debbie Cook brought up in her email that she sent out to all Scientologists.
Yeah, I 100% get what you're saying. And basically what you're saying is that they would have to make an announcement along the lines of that the church has drifted off course, and where Hubbard mandated that the church would exist by services, supplying services and books and so forth, and it's switched into this other thing, and we're making a course correction, and we're doing it under this new leadership, and it means that you're going to have more time and more money to go up the bridge because we're changing all this stuff. Really make it a positive. And I get what you're saying. I don't disagree that there is some possible scenario wherein that happens. If we're going to conjecture about it, I don't disagree.
Oh, wait, did I take you off the screen
somehow?
Yeah,
you did. Somehow you took me off. And I know you didn't mean to do that. Yeah, no problem.
I tried to shift my whole browser over so I could look at the comments without looking like I'm ignoring you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't disagree that is the kind of messaging they'd have to do. It would have to be very much aimed at the original purpose and how they've gone off course. But there still remains the fact that David Miscavige is like a mafia boss, and he controls all of these different entities on a very personal level. It's the reason he got rid of all the top managers, the top people, because he does this. And how they would pick that stuff up without the entire operation falling utterly into chaos and contracting into practically nothing. That's the thing I can't figure out.
Let's tackle that. Let's tackle that, because that's something I also disagree with you on. Why? Let's just take instead of talking about someone replacing David Miscavige, let's just say for a second, David Miscavige drops dead, disappears from sight. Why do you think that would put things into chaos?
Because who else is going to micromanage SMP, the December Center, Bridge Publications, Golden Era Productions? He micromanages all these things himself. And
do you think that these operations run because they're being micromanaged, or in spite of the fact that they're being micromanaged?
No, I think they run because he micromanages them. I think because there aren't people at a high enough level. There's maybe one person who knows enough about how the Descent Center bridge runs that they could actually step in and run them under.
But do you know who knows how the Descent Center runs?
Yeah.
The person who's running the Descent Center, who has to report their statistics hourly to RTC because it's being micromanaged. Like like Miscavige could disappear, and everyone who's currently running their local continental unit or their org unit or their fundraising unit would still have all of the tools and information they need to do their jobs, except they wouldn't be doing it under like threat of death.
Yeah, that's a nice, we're not going to ever disagree. We're not going to ever agree on that.
Well, you gotta. What? You think that these people do their jobs on a day-to-day basis because they're under threat of expulsion from Scientology at every minute by Miscavige?
No, I don't think that's probably true to some degree, but I think that they are under certain tactical and strategic, however you would say it, management that comes directly from his office, and that I think they would feel lost if that connection was cut. And I'm not trying to pump him up in any way. I'm just saying that the reason that he got rid of all those people is so that he could manage all these operations. I mean,
he got rid of them because they posed some sort of a threat. Like the people he got rid of were also supposed to be managing the operations. He just didn't want them to be doing that anymore. Like, it's not like things weren't being managed before he got rid of everybody.
Right.
Like my goal here isn't just to disagree with you. It's to understand where you're coming from. Why do you think that Miscavige's sudden disappearance or absence would result in people anywhere in the echelon feeling lost?
Because I don't think it's going to be like, at the Wizard of Oz, where the Wicked Witch dies and all of a sudden everybody's freed from their whatever it is, and they're happy and they start singing. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe I just have this bias because I've been in so many meetings. I was, and I know Russ Bellin, and I know if he had as the writer of that email says, if he had the corporate power to remove Miscavige, I look at that and I think, well, what would he do if he wouldn't know what to do? None of those guys would know what to do. So that's why I think I see him more as, like, as I said, like a mafia boss. Like when you sort of, if you don't get rid of that person terminatedly, if you know what I mean, it's going to cause some kind of chaos.
Let's take Russ Bellin as an example. I don't know Russ Bellin, but you say, well, because I've been in so many meetings with him. What, you think Russ Bellin would just be lost without David Miscavige making him lick bathroom floors or something? I'm not quite understanding.
If he had to run the Descent Center and all those other places, I think he would be.
But why would Russ Bellin be running the Descent Center?
Well, because if he displaced him, not running it, but
there's already someone who runs the Descent Center. No,
I'm assuming there are. I'm sure, because I guess the presses keep running.
Okay. Is it that you're saying that Miscavige has put himself in a position where he is now the only person who truly understands what every unit of Scientology is doing, and therefore there's no one else who could step in?
Possibly he's the only one that actually understands how the whole thing fits together. I can see you don't agree with that.
I mean, you think Mark Yeager doesn't understand how all the pieces of Scientology fit together?
100% does not understand. He's an idiot.
He was fucking CMO int and a deputy IG for admin for the 40 years.
Yeah, and he knows all that stuff really well. He knows all the policies and all the different stuff.
Well, that's all anyone in Scientology knows.
Okay.
What do you say? Okay, if you disagree with me, that's all.
Well,
anyone knows.
I don't know what I mean. I don't know what to say. I have a very strong intuition about the fact that if they got rid of him, there would just be chaos because of the way people perceive him, which I don't agree with that. I mean, I would like to see that chaos happen. I would like to see that collapse happen. Maybe my own personal bias is I don't want there to be somebody to come in and take charge, because I don't want to see this thing continue any longer than than it should or could. But I really doubt this idea that these people could just come in and take over. I think Scientology can't exist without a central charismatic, quote unquote, charismatic leader, like it's always had one. And like all of a sudden there's going to be what, like, a president of the church and an international director and some board, and they're going to come together and they're going to lead Scientology. I don't think so. It's a cult and it needs that kind of central, very strong autocratic leader.
Have you ever worked in an org?
You mean a non-production org, a class like you did?
A Scientology org.
Well, I worked at Golden Era Productions. I worked at Scientology. You mean a delivery org, a service org?
A service org that delivers Scientology.
No.
Okay.
And I don't. Yeah.
So, like every staff member in the world, staff member and Sea Org member, and I'm not talking about management because I don't know what the fuck people management do. They sit around and just jerk off all the time. I have literally no idea what they fucking do.
Right.
People show up and they wear their hat, whether they're in Div 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6.
Right.
And they deal with the people in front of them and they do the jobs that the policy says they're supposed to do. Has absolutely nothing to do with David Miscavige, other than Miscavige has set priorities such as raise money for ideal orgs, raise money for the IAS. Obviously, he's changed how bridge programming works. But so when I say it has nothing to do with Miscavige, I mean, Miscavige could disappear for 6 months right now. He could just go dark. Nobody could hear from Miscavige. And it would not impact the day-to-day life of any Scientology staff member in the entire world in a service organization.
It'd probably improve them.
That's my point.
I'm sure the lives of all the staff at Gold are improved.
Right.
But everybody like Gold they miss Dave. They're still holding out the hope that he returns someday.
Nobody in Scientology gives a shit about Gold except for the people at Gold.
Okay.
Don't you agree?
I don't know. I mean, I helped run the place for years, so I don't know. I mean, we were pretty narcissistic about our position. Like when we went to, like if I went to your org and met you, you'd have to call me sir. And I wasn't even in the Sea Org. So, that was kind of how we felt about the whole thing. It didn't seem like nobody gave a shit about us because even me and SO, which was my designation that Miscavige made up for non-Sea Org, you would have to call me sir if I showed up at your org. So we certainly didn't think that nobody gave a shit about us because, maybe that's just an authority thing. I don't know.
You know what I just realized?
What's that?
I think I realized that we might be talking about two completely different things.
I think we are because we agree on everything but this. Because
it just occurred to me what you might mean, and it occurred to me that I would completely agree with you if this is what you meant.
What's that? You're giving me an out. I appreciate that.
Oh, what am I doing?
You held your finger up. That was awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, go ahead.
I would agree with the statement. Nobody at International Management or Golden Era Productions would have any idea what they should do with their day if David Miscavige wasn't there telling them what to do with their day.
Yeah, at some point the orders would run out. You're right about that. And they would be sitting around wondering what the hell do we do? They would make some shit up and they would do it.
I might even go so far as to say that even people down to the CLO level, who at this point, their only job is to execute whatever Miscavige's latest management orders are,
right,
would have no idea what to do with their day if all of a sudden Miscavige wasn't telling them what their priorities were. And I guess that's where we've been accidentally talking past each other, and I apologize for that.
No
At
problem.
the service org level, which really is what Scientology is. Maybe that's the difference. And maybe that's my bias because I was always at a service org level. At the end of the day, Scientology is whatever's happening at the service orgs. Like
absolutely. It's not what's happening on Scientology network. It's not, you're right.
It's not what's happening at the HGB. It's not what's happening in the CLO. To the extent that what's happening in those buildings should be impacting what's happening at the service orgs. But Scientology is whatever's happening at the service orgs.
Right.
And those service orgs sure as hell do not need David Miscavige telling them what to do.
No, they certainly don't.
They certainly don't.
No, they absolutely don't.
Okay.
I mean, you could be right. He could drop dead tomorrow and everything could just keep running. It could be like, that Japanese World War II soldier that they found 30 years later on a Philippine island, and he was still like thinking the war was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, people, it literally could be like that because the people would keep doing. Maybe it just is, Aaron. Maybe it's this bizarre ecosphere. Maybe he is just the pustule that needs to be removed from it. And this is what Mark has been saying. Now we're starting to.
But this is because you and Mark have the same bias. You were always at INT and you were never working in the orgs.
Yeah, he only worked at like Able or INT, or he never worked at a classified
Which
org.
Doesn't even count because it's not an org.
No, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. And who did I work for? I worked for Gold. I worked for Other Services. I worked for CST. That's all I know. I just know, knowing all these top executives and thinking most of them were idiots.
Right.
So most of them, some of them were really amazing people. But yeah, this is this is kind of the clash of internet INT-based versus, you were like class 5, class 6, and AO, right?
Well, that's what service orgs are.
Yeah, but you worked at all 3 of those level orgs. You worked.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So yeah,
and I can tell you, even at the advanced org level, David Miscavige could drop dead tomorrow. Nobody could hear from him for 5 years. It wouldn't affect what the guys at the service orgs are doing at all. And I can think of some minor exceptions to that very general statement, but because honestly, it is David Miscavige and his RTC reps that make life in orgs hell.
Absolutely.
If they were just left to their own devices, stats would probably go down, but life would be pretty decent.
No, I agree with you 100%. I do. I agree with you.
I think there's some truth to the fact that, yes, you put a gun to someone's head and you can get the stats to go up, but that's no way to live.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not. You're right.
Okay, so theoretically, and obviously, I actually enjoy speculating on what it would have taken for Shelly to take over, because I wonder what would have happened if Shelly were to at least get 8 of the top guys together. And I don't know, we're talking Will Hare, Yeager, LeServe, Russ Bellin, Marty, Mike.
Well, Mike,
to be like,
when he was there, yeah.
To be like, exactly, at the time. To be like, look, Dave says jump, we say no. What's Dave gonna do? Go cry to the lawyers? What's he gonna do?
Wow, I don't know. Probably go to the lawyers. He'd probably go to Monique and say help.
Could you imagine if he brought Monique to the base and had Monique give people orders?
Yeah, I don't think they listen to her. But yeah, she's been to the base plenty of times, but not giving people orders.
Are you just giving in now because you don't want to argue anymore?
I am a little exhausted, if you want to know the truth. You did wear me down. Yeah, I mean, the thing is like I can't disagree with you. I mean, I find it difficult to disagree with you. It's when I run the experiment in my mind, I don't see Shelly doing it because I never saw that she had the temperament for it. It does take a certain temperament. And I do think, this is a little bit like when you look at a person who's completely insane, sociopathic, murderous, and you think, how could they do that? Well, it's always a stupid question because you can never think in that mindset. You can never think like a sociopath or a psychopath or a murderous person. So that question of how could they do that? So keep in mind, Scientology is a cult. Cults do best when they're really designed to be run by an autocratic, quote unquote, charismatic, and to the people who love him, he has a lot of charisma, person. They're not intended to be run, like Scientology was never intended to be anything but a vehicle for L. Ron Hubbard to write his name into history. That's what the whole thing's always been about. And I think just its DNA says it's only going to exist with some autocratic figure. And I just don't see Shelly becoming that. And
that's interesting. I've never, I never knew Shelly. I never met her. I never worked with her. I've not considered until you just said it right now that you don't think she would have even had the temperament to take over. Let's not say the temperament to get rid of Dave, because I don't know that anyone had the temperament to get rid of him. But that to fill his shoes. I always considered Shelly was sort of a fire-eating Sea Org executive. I've never heard anyone really say otherwise.
I I never saw that side of her. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because remember, I was in a silo. I was in a bubble.
Okay.
I was there to be constantly love bombed and solve problems for Dave and the church, to make him look good, to make the church look good. That was my job.
Yeah.
Which I'm now holding myself accountable for. But from what I did see, I only saw the Tom Cruise who goes on the runway and is charming to the press, right? But I don't doubt all the other things that I've heard, because I know the people that are saying them.
Right.
It's the same with Shelly. What I saw of her, she was Dave's assistant. We would talk on the phone, or she would talk with my former wife. We would arrange, birthday presents and Christmas presents and things like that. It was all very social. She was always very sweet, very cordial. And then I hear the stories about her. She could be a real firebrand and blah, blah, blah. Of course she could. She was an executive in the Sea Org, so that was kind of what was expected. But to her basic temperament, I always perceived it as on the soft side. Like the moments of hardness were done with effort, where Dave's natural instinct is to be quite mean to people. It's a big difference in temperament. So,
no, for sure. But I'm not saying that you have the same temperament as Dave, but just the same temperament to be. I mean, you have to understand these echelons of management. People don't just accidentally fail upwards. Well, that might not be true.
You might want to rethink that.
Guillaume Lasserre did not fail upwards into the post of EDNs, and I would have a hard time believing that Mark Yeager failed upwards into the post of CMO, but I don't know enough about his history to comment on it. But I know Guillaume had a hell of a production record, and I know he was a fire breather, but a compassionate fire breather. And guys, I never work with the people. I'm going from what I've been told, so maybe I'm wrong, right? So I'm not saying that anyone should be able to be a David Miscavige, because I'm honestly not sure many people in Scientology are as horrible as David Miscavige. But there's a lot of very competent Sea Org executives in the history of the Sea Org. And that's what I mean, just what it means to be a competent Sea Org executive. I've never heard anyone say they didn't think Shelly had that quality.
I didn't know her well enough to know that. I'm not speaking to her executive administrative leadership capabilities. I was just speaking to her basic temperament.
I got it.
So she very well could have been. I mean, look, so you've got these different entities. You have to account for who's going to run them, because it would have to stop being an autocracy. It would have to be like you basically you have Author Services, CST, RTC, and you have the Church of Scientology International, and you would have to account. Those are the main corporations. You'd have to account for those in terms of who's going to run the church. Ray Midoff and Guillaume Lasserre, they could probably run Church of Scientology International between the two of them. And then there's probably somebody else who could run ASI. What's her name? Who's one of the heads of ASI? Gunhild. You probably know her. What's it? Gunhild? I don't know. Think of her last name. She basically is a top executive. She could probably run ASI. So I mean, you could rationalize how CST. I'm not sure who would run CST, but. And, Gold has a commanding officer right now who's a pretty decent person, treats the staff really well, Miscavige isn't around. So that makes things a lot easier for them. But still, it's a cult. It's designed
to have an
autocratic leader.
Let me ask you a question, Mitch.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the redundant and unnecessary management structures that exist in Scientology are probably a direct result of the corporate sort out and the effort to shield corporations from each other and within each other. Right. So absolutely. Would you agree with me that if we threw out that necessity to create some convoluted shell corporation type deal, you could get rid of international management and effectively run Scientology from middle management, HGB, Los Angeles? If you took some of the most competent INT executives, everything at INT is redundant to what happens at middle management, except for Golden Air Productions. I'm not including Golden Air Productions in that equation. The International Management Executive Committee and the Watchdog Committee and CMO INT are completely and wholly unnecessary. Middle management has an international function. The international management base is totally fucking unnecessary.
Well, it also doesn't exist anymore.
So but even when it did exist, it was totally unnecessary. In my view, I'm wondering if you agree.
I don't know. You kind of press me into an area that I don't feel fully qualified talking about, and I'll tell you
That's
why.
fair.
I tell you why, because it is a global organization, and there are entities all over the world, and I believe it does need some kind of global coordination. Maybe that can happen at the CLO level, because that is where the different regions are organized into areas, right? So maybe if there was just somebody ahead
No,
of this.
it happens at middle management. Every Scientology entity
But what
in the
about the
world,
coordination with entities around the world? Like, how do they coordinate?
every Scientology organization in the world answers to middle management, and then middle management answers to int management. Int management doesn't have a farther reaching umbrella than middle management does.
Okay, well, for a guy that grew up in a cult, you really are smart about this. I got to tell you, because I went to art school, and what you're saying is like, I just don't even get it.
Oh,
Because
but I spent my whole life
was
studying the cult.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Fair point. Yeah, and I just made films that sort of indoctrinated people into believing that they should not report crimes to authorities. Well, literally. But
So I've seen some
avoided
comments in the chat that I'm asking for your opinion, but I want to argue with you about it. I want Mitch to argue with me about my opinion as much as I want to argue with Mitch about his opinion.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm trying to do my best, but
That's okay.
But the level that I was on, like, to me, middle management, like you're talking about, to me, from my biased opinion, they didn't do shit. They just shuffled papers around, and it was the leaders at international management who were actually making it all happen. And then, because
can you give me an example?
No, I can't. I don't have an example of this.
Well, here's an example that goes through my head.
Films.
You have all orgs in the world that have an HCO. All the HCOs report to the Cont HCO. The Cont HCO reports to senior HCO, and senior HCO reports to a stab exec int for some reason.
Okay. Well, it's good to know that. I never knew that.
Why? Why does the stab exec int run senior HCO? No reason. Or LRH comment. Why? No reason whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at this. You're looking at this from the perspective of a person who worked at a service org. I'm going to let my dog out real quick. Take a second.
All right, we're doing this solo, guys. How do you think I'm doing? Am I winning? No. This, by the way, this really was. See, if you'll notice, the reason I wanted to have this conversation with Mitch is because I know we disagree, and I actually, I was explaining to everybody. The reason I thought this conversation would be interesting is because I know we view it differently. That to me is what makes a conversation interesting.
Absolutely.
This is so, because I know that a lot of other people in the world will listen to our sides of the conversation and have different opinions about what we're saying.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah, but see, it's interesting. Look at my perspective now. I'm up at Golden Earth Productions, and I'm working as a filmmaker. Like, I'm not a manager, right?
Yeah.
But I have the respect of everybody, because I helped to fulfill the purpose of Golden Earth Productions, which was to complete these films, and I got that done. And that was a mission that went undone for like 15 years, and I had fun for the first 10 minutes doing it. But then I have a certain perspective. I'm like up on this sort of mountaintop with these guys, and Mike Rinder was one of the first execs I knew up there and got friendly with. Lots of meetings with Miscavige and all these other people. And then I'd be at the HGB, where middle management is, for some reason. Like, we were shooting orientation, and it just was a bunch of guys running around pushing papers and talking on the phone. It didn't seem to me. Can you understand that? That may be a complete false perception, but it never seemed to me like they were anything other than office workers, right? And I worked at HQ. You get what I'm saying? I think it's perspective.
So what's interesting though is that you're actually correct. The redundancy between int management and middle management technically makes them both potentially useless. Whichever one's being effective, the other one's useless. So like, if int is having to bypass, then middle management has no reason to be there. If middle management's actually doing its job, then int management has no reason to be there. So let's take OSA, for example. All the orgs in the world, their DSAs report to the the OSA Cont office, who reports to the OSA int office. Then what the fuck is WDC OSA supposed to do? Just perpetually bypass OSA int. That's how it works. If OSA int was doing its job, WDC OSA has nothing to do.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I can't argue with you on that.
And I think David Miscavige's insistence on bypassing everybody all the time and expecting people at Int to do the same made middle management nothing but paper pushers.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you come over to the dark side.
No, but this is we're now having a different conversation here.
I know.
I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy.
There's one final piece. Unless there's more you wanted to say on that, there's one final piece that's even more interesting, I think.
Sure.
And
I just wanted to remind everybody we were talking about this 2005 email about Shelly taking over. I don't think she had the temperament to do it, and I don't mean the management smarts or the respectability of people, but I don't think she had the temperament. That's, B, David Miscavige is a mafia boss, and the only way you get rid of them is in a box. And C, I think the whole way this thing's set up is everything would descend into chaos. Which I would be happy. Go ahead.
What about this?
Yeah.
Scientology was actually growing before David Miscavige took over. So the idea, it's been shrinking under David Miscavige's command. The idea that everything would instantly fall apart if not for the guy under whose leadership Scientology has been failing does not compute for me.
Well, I'm not so egotistical that I'm not willing to shuttle it off onto my wishful thinking that Scientology would just fall into chaos. That's a real possibility. You've been out a lot longer than me, and I'm still like, fuck those guys. You know what I'm saying? So that's a real possibility. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out, where I fit in the world. But this really is my opinion, because I met so many of these guys and I thought they were idiots. I mean, I worked with Russ, most of them.
Mitch, it's interesting. Mike Rinders tells me the same thing. He's like, Mark Yeager's a moron. Ray Minoff is like stupid.
Yeah, I mean, but he's such a nice guy, and I think he's really a good tech guy. I just don't think he's anything beyond that. I mean, I got audited by the guy. I knew him really well all the way back to when I first got into CCM.
Is he at least a good auditor, Mitch? Is he at least a good auditor?
Yeah. By what we called a good auditor. I mean, I had very little auditing when I got to gold. Once you engage with the Sea Org, it's just all sec checks and admin training and stuff like that, right? Maybe you'll do, but no, I had done L11 before I went to gold. And then they decided I needed some L11 review. And so Ray did it. I was pretty thrilled because he was senior CSN at the time. So that was a big deal. So yeah, I thought he was a good auditor. But what does that mean he was a good auditor? I mean, it's like,
did you enjoy the
auditing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I always liked Ray a lot.
He didn't fall asleep on you or anything like that?
No. But those kinds of things only happen. Those were all because those guys were sleep deprived.
Exactly.
Like those pictures of Mike, which is sickening that Dave had these pictures of Mike asleep in an editing room. That fucker, he kept Mike up for days and then took a picture of him when he fell asleep and went, look, he's a lazy bum. I mean, it's just horrible stuff. But
okay, so this is the last part that I said I thought would be, and it's actually the first thing. It's actually the first thing we mentioned in the video.
Okay.
Which was, and it has to do with this portion. I don't know. Let's see if it'll let me highlight it. That's why Shelly Miscavige was never sent to the hole in the, okay. Now you said, in your opinion, Shelly Miscavige was never sent to the hole because Miscavige had, your words were, it would have been an image problem.
Yeah.
To send Shelly to the hole.
Yeah, I think so. I do. I think she just needed to be disappeared. She was in a different category because she had been his wife and his assistant. I just don't buy the idea that he didn't put her in there because she would rally everybody's support, everybody in the hole who wasn't trying to escape, and I'm talking about people like Lisa Schroer, Allen, and what's her name? I can't remember her name right now. These guys were all trying to get back in Miscavige's good graces. So anybody that came in there and was contrary to that, I think they would have been eaten alive, even Shelly.
But that's different than an image problem.
Yeah, I know. I'm just throwing that into the mix additionally.
Okay. So my question to you is, how is it seems to me that taking Shelly off post, banishing her, and frolicking around with his communicator, Larice, in a way that has caused the public and the Sea Org who associate with Dave to think he's married to Larice. How is that not a bigger image problem than sending Shelly to the hole?
Okay, two things. They think he's married to her?
Yes.
Oh,
So
wow.
Rachel Hastings, who did an interview recently with Mike.
I know. She's one of my
closest
friends. Yeah.
And I'm going to do a chat with her soon. When this whole thing broke about, when you and I were arguing about the Shelly Larice Dave thing, you're my favorite person to argue with, Mitch.
Yeah, likewise.
So look, I called Rachel up and I was like, Rachel, what are your thoughts on the Larice thing? And she goes, I just assumed they were married. and I'm hoping not putting incorrect words in your mouth, Rachel. But if so, you can tell me later. We'll do a video. And Rachel said, but I think she also backpedaled a little bit and said, but no. She said, I just assumed they were a 2D. She didn't say I assumed they were married. In fact, Rachel was leaning towards thinking that he was probably still married to Shelly.
Yeah, there you go.
And he said, but I just assumed that Dave and Larice were in a relationship.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying all along.
Well, now hold on. For the Sea Org culture, thinking that someone is in a romantic sexual relationship with someone who's not their wife is the worst image problem you could ever have.
Right. Okay, good. And now you've just circled back to the reason why we can't. It's not so easy to get rid of Miscavige because he can do anything he wants. That and throwing. There's two kinds of events. The philosopher Talib, what's his name?
I don't know. I grew up in a cult. I'm not familiar with the works of
Talib. But his books were published after you got out of the cult. You're just not a reader. But anyway, this guy wrote a book called The Black Swan, which has nothing to do with the movie The Black Swan.
I saw the movie.
Yeah, no, this has nothing to do with that. This is about how we deal with unpredictable events. There are two types of events, unpredictable events that we face. One are called, and they're called black swans. Some are slow moving, like the internet. They take a long time to take over. Some are very quick, like 9/11. They happen like that. Throwing Shelly in the hole, that's 9/11. That's an instant black swan. Nobody expected it. Him taking up with Larice, that's like the internet. That's a black swan that takes place over a long period of time. People slowly get used to it. They forget about the other one. And the image problem it's not a problem. It's just not. Do you get what it gets dealt with that way. It's like a creep. It's sort of
no. That's a really great point. The difference between those things is very important. Yeah. And the truth is, most people these days, even in the Sea Org, have absolutely no idea who Shelly Miscavige is. They've never heard of her. They've never seen her. They
shocking
have no clue.
To me. I mean, it blows my mind. I guess.
But the one thing Rachel said that I thought was interesting, and actually, by specifying these black swan event, you've changed. You've added something to the algebra for me.
Okay, good.
One of the things that Rachel told me, though, is that even some VIP public who would come to Scientology media productions and interact with Dave for whatever reason would come to her and go, "Oh, I was just speaking with COB and his wife." Even the public are thinking these two are a couple.
Wow, I'm shocked. I've never heard that. I mean, I've been gone for a few years now, but I never heard that when.
Now that's not to say that COB introduced her as his wife. The public just assumed.
Yeah, they assumed because of their closeness, and he's wearing a ring.
Yes.
And who else would it be?
Now, I know people are mentioning Mike Rinder in the comments here. Mike has said definitively he believes Dave and Shelly are still married, but he also doesn't think Dave and Larice are sleeping together. And you do.
Well, yeah. I mean, I agree with Mike 100% that they're still married. He doesn't think they're sleeping together. That would mean that they have a truly amazing platonic relationship. They have to have spent the night on a transatlantic flight. I mean, we got on that plane, as I've told the story. We all had tacos, from some 5-star restaurant. The plane took off. They disappeared. I didn't see them till the next morning when we landed. And the bedroom in a G5, in a Gulfstream 5, whatever it was, it's not very big. And for two, the admonitions against that in the Sea Org, that's just against so many rules that.
That's one of those things, Mitch, where it's like, yeah, technically it's against the rules, but it's not going out 2D.
I know, but it makes a point but he has Has he not sent people to the FPRD for less?
To the RPF?
I mean, to the FPRD. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah.
So
I
actually,
am
this is
dyslexic. We proved that.
So I just saw an excellent question, and I asked someone, and this because Larissa's husband died. And the question is, does Larice wear a wedding ring? And I've simply never found anyone who knows the answer to that question.
No, I never noticed one. I would have absolutely noticed one. I spent so much time with them. Yeah, but remember, right before when her husband got sick, Dave ordered them to be divorced. So that's a part of this story. Yeah, I don't know. I disagree with Mike.
Well, and I don't want to speak for Mike. I just know that one of the reasons I have always said that Dave is just this sort of asexual guy is because that's what Mike said. I'm taking Mike's lead on that.
Yeah.
Now,
and I don't disagree with that. I've kind of wondered if he's like this weird sort of a eunuch, like he's this weird asexual guy. I'm totally serious because I used to work out at the gym at Gold, and I'd see him in there sometimes in workout clothes, right? And I'm thinking, this guy seems to be missing some parts. Okay,
he was wearing some nut huggers, but there were no nuts.
They seemed to be sadly missing.
What are you being for real?
No, right I'm not even joking with you. I'm not even joking. No, I'm not even joking. I don't make a big deal about this kind of stuff because I don't get into body shaming, but I will agree with this idea of him being asexual. But the first, this is YouTube, so I can't say it, but
sure you can. We're well into the video.
Okay, good. So what are his favorite ways of addressing people or sexually? You're a cocksucker. Mike Rinder can go out on his own and suck dick. I mean, this guy is like, Dave is very light in the pants. Even Mark's backing me up on that.
Do you know what's funny, Mitch? I've always seen Miscavige as an aggressively testosterone-filled heterosexual guy because of all the stories I hear. He just sounds, and remember he went through that fitness phase where he had his short sleeve shirts and he was like showing off his muscles and shit.
That's when I ran into him at the gym. I mean, he was obsessed.
And he seems such an angry little son of a bitch that you're like, this guy seems so alpha,
He's like roided.
But because when someone's so like angry and you think you just think he'd just be trying to fuck everything that walks. But so it's funny when I'm hearing another side of the story now.
Well, that's why when I flew with them to England and I was on the plane when they spent the night there, there was this one little nagging thing in the back of my mind that didn't compute. And it's just, he seems to be so asexual. And yet he knows that sexuality is such a button with people that, and he's such a toxic person. I mean, he jokes about race, jokes about other people's religions, jokes about their weight. I was in so many meetings with Molly Hortling, who was,
I know Molly.
Molly.
Heavy. She was a little heavy.
She's a little heavy. She's like, she did the Descent Center and Bridge. I mean, she literally made those projects happen. So and then Miscavige put her in charge of SMP. And I would be in a meetings with her where he would just get into her for being from the South, stupid idiot, because obviously people from the South are dumb. She's like from Mississippi or something. This is a smart woman. And then getting on to her about her weight with 12 people in a conference room. So, I mean, he's really toxic. Rage Elf might be a new name.
Just for the viewers, Molly Hortling is, for him to be dressing her down like that. When I was in the Sea Org, Molly was pretty much she was the COCMO pack. So the most senior person in LA other than Dave's personal reps. And he's talking to her like that in meetings.
Total trash. Total. She's a dumb C word from Mississippi. I think it was Mississippi. And she's fat and, blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, the degree of compartmentalization that you have to do. I mean, that's a different conversation. But when you don't leave, like I didn't under those circumstances, you're actually starting to traumatize yourself by staying there. But that's, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah. And not just her. Many other people.
I've always wondered if Dave's infatuation with people's sex lives is that the guy's like 62 years old and he slept with one or two people in his entire life. Do you think that's his problem?
I don't know. I can't relate. I mean, my problem's the opposite. Not anymore because I've finally matured out of it. But I mean, I wasn't busted at S&P and sent to gold for nothing. Okay. So.
Dave was jealous, Mitch.
Well, I was just trying to have a personal life. Well, Dave claims he didn't know anything about it. He has a letter, which I'll share with you sometime. I never told you about that, right? The last letter I got from Dave in 2018. Do
tell. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the reason that there'll probably never be a hate site against me, knock on wood, so like, I don't even care, but because I have a communication from him about, what good work I did and what good friends we are. So it's really kind of hard to then have a hate site against somebody, right? When you have letters from the leaders saying that you're awesome.
Did he say that? Did he say you can be my wingman anytime?
No, he didn't. He's not going to do that for anybody. Oh, okay. His wingman is Lou, but he did say, yeah. Oh yeah. Tom, of course. I forgot about Tom, but Lou knows everything and Tom doesn't. I know this is another thing we can argue about sometime, but I think Tom knows far less about the abuse than people think.
I think I agree with you on that.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Then we're never going to talk about that because our purpose in life is to.
We can argue about it anyway. I'm up for it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Lou knows everything, but people don't understand the power of Miscavige's siloing and bubbling, that he could really keep Tom away from that stuff. So he just doesn't know about it. I mean, he even Shelly screwed up. I have to say one thing. When I was running this mental experiment, there was another thought that I had, and I just really want to share it with you. Because I thought, how would Shelly be able to come out and lead? Because of all of the things that have happened in Scientology, censure disappearance, like SMP, like the changes at Int Base, like the December Center, like blah, 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 or ideal orgs, all that stuff. And I wondered if somebody wasn't bringing all of the videos about those things, those wonderful, expensive looking, very glossy videos about all Dave's wonderful, aren't bringing those up to CST and showing them to Shelly. And saying, look what Dave has done in your absence. You get what I'm saying? This is the
absolutely
thing. She may know about all that stuff, and she may be sitting there going, wow, Dave's doing an incredible job. I'm just biding my time. Because, in 2008, when I ran into her, she was fine. I mean, she was laughing it up with her girlfriends, kind of like, this is my life now. Yes, that was 2008, and that was 3 years after she disappeared, not 18 years after she disappeared. So
I wouldn't expect it to get worse. I would expect it to get better.
Yeah, you mean from her
yeah.
point? Yeah, exactly. But I wondered if they hadn't been all this time indoctrinating her, briefing her on all of the things that Dave has done, the IBL org buildings and, the dissemination center and SMP and all these things.
I think that's very insightful. I think that's exactly what he would want to do. He would want to convince her that he was right for having gotten rid of her.
Right.
And she was wrong for cross-ordering him in any way, shape, or form.
Right, exactly. And one of the things that the conversation that you and I are in anticipating it, because I saw the letter and then I sent you a text. I said, yeah, you're right. Russ Mellon's a pussy. You said it right. I just had to validate you for guessing so correctly. And then I said, not so fast. I'm not so sure. And then we decided to have this debate about it and kind of express our views. And in the interim of my going through that in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? I'll bet they're briefing her on all of this stuff. And she's just sitting on the sidelines going, wow. Because think about it. If it was going badly with her gone, that would put her in a position of going, I got to get back in the game.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But so they keep her indoctrinated into how great everything's going.
That's right. Maybe Shelly's trying to figure out what the hell to do for OT 9 and 10.
Yeah, maybe they got her on that project. Maybe they have her
there has to be an OT 9 and 10 project. There has to be, right?
Yeah. I mean, eventually they're gonna the cows come home to roost. No, what comes home to roost?
Roosters.
The roosters. Yeah, eventually the roosters gonna come home.
Chickens come home to roost.
Yeah, with the roosters. Yeah, eventually that chicken's gonna come home to roost, and they're gonna have to answer up for that because either that or all the OTAs are going to leave. So I would imagine, but
yeah.
Well, this has certainly been a great conversation. I'm not trying to bring it to an end, but it certainly has.
I do, but it's coming organically to an end, and I do time wise. I need to.
No problem. It's been a great conversation. I love having these conversations with you, and because I think often, believe it or not, I digest a lot of your content. So, and I often consider the fact that I have such a biased from the top down viewpoint because I was put in this position at INT, being the senior director, and and then you have this other perspective which I can't really think with, which is having worked at service orgs, right? Which is completely, to me, service orgs are where they showed my films, right? That was it. I mean, I would go to service orgs. I would be asked to go maybe to LA org or someplace and check on a film after it was released. I'd go sit in the film room and I'd watch it. I'd make sure that the copy was okay and the audio was okay. And that was pretty much my interaction with service orgs, other than when I did services, but I stopped doing services when I went to Gold.
Right. I can tell you that at Flag, for the out-of-work trainees, the tech films, for the most part, is where students would go to take naps.
Yeah, take a break. Take a nap. Take a break. Well, I appreciate that review.
Guys, if you're not subscribed to Mitch Brisker, jump over to Mitch Brisker on YouTube. You can't miss him. Look at that beautiful face right there.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
And hey, anything in any one of my videos that you want to argue about, let me know anytime. I enjoy it.
Oh yeah, I will. No, I absolutely will. Yeah, I absolutely will. This has been great fun.
It's wonderful entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Are you not entertained?
Oh no, this is more fun than I've had. All day.
And by the way, anyone else who spent time at international management, because by the way, when I argue about these things, it's not. I want to have my mind changed. This is how I learn. Right. I want to learn new things, new opinions. Right. I was never at INT. Right. I want to know the other perspective. I'm still trying to figure out why I cannot get a former middle management executive or an international management executive to tell me what the weekly stats were for bodies in the shop and gross income internationally, worldwide, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. If you're out there and you feel like you've told me and I've forgotten, I want to have these conversations, because truthfully, I think these are the type of conversations that actually your average public Scientologist would be interested in hearing anyway. We're not just sitting here shitting on L. Ron Hubbard all day in SPTV land. We're not just shitting on anything. We're having just real conversations. Thank you.
What?
I don't know. All right, everyone. All right, everyone.
Thanking?
Thank you. All right, let's end it there.
Let's do it. If I could just say one thing, Mark Headley and I are doing this series. Mark and Mitch Make a Scientology Film. We're going to be back Sunday with the next episode. So
okay,
it's not scheduled back, but look for that. I got to do a plug.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us this afternoon, guys. I'm going to have a surprise guest later this evening, live in studio. So get ready for that. Thanks to everyone who watches until the very end. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click